This is the 7th day of this September 1981 7-day session. And today we will read a few excerpts from a book called The Tiger's Cave. And this is the part on the Heart Sutra, which is a commentary on the Prajnaparamita by the abbot Obora. It doesn't say anything about this abbot, at least I can't find it. Seems to be a trackless man. All one knows is he's an abbot of a temple, because he writes at times autobiographically about his life there. And he's also headmaster in a school, or was headmaster in a school. It's of the Soto sect. A while ago, a year or two ago, we read very thoroughly and commented thoroughly on a large part, not the whole. We never finished the whole thing. Today we'll just condense into one teisho. Some of you may be tired from long sitting last night. This is a text which is not so difficult to follow. Commentaries are made by a very human being, this abbot, who, as you will find, very freely lays bare what goes on within himself. I remember one time, many years ago, not giving sesshin yet, just giving some talks, I read from excerpts from this book, and one person came up to me and said, "Why do you read something about somebody who is so imperfect? I'm so imperfect myself. I'd like to read about an abbot or hear about an abbot who is a little bit farther along than that." Depresses me. This person didn't quite listen. It's a very revealing statement. We want to either idealize ourselves, and if we're unable to do that, idealize someone else. Remember, from my school years, we used to have little booklets, empty books, which we passed around in each class to our friends. Maybe you do this here too, and everybody wrote a little poem in it. So you had of each of your friends, and you gave it to everybody, even those that you didn't like. You had So the book got full, lots of poems in it. And the poem that I wrote in all these books was something I'd heard my mother recite. I think it was by Goethe, and this means a lot to a German. But the poem, there was something so lofty in it, it's so elating. And this is what it said: "Always strive toward the whole. And if you yourself cannot become a whole, then as a serving link, attach yourself to a whole." There seems something magnificent in this. Well, I'll leave this, won't comment on that. A lot of idealism in that, as you can clearly see. We are whole. We don't have to become whole. All one needs to see is what divides. And attaching oneself to a whole, in that attachment there's fear of not being a whole. And in that fear, can you discern what's whole? Only wholeness can discern wholeness. No fear. No attachment. But free relationship. We'll pick just a few sections here. Here and there, things are bleeded. All Buddhism has the notion of passing over. It is in Zen also. Passing over does not necessarily mean being reborn in the Pure Land, paradise, in the West. It means to pass from the present illusory eye to the eye of realization. The idea is a very sound one, but people today are not interested in being reborn. Instead, they talk of living meaningfully, of how to live. But in their talk about how to live, there seems to be a frank spirit of doing it at others' expense, which is hard to justify. This is when one thinks narrow. One's family, one's own life, one's group, one's country, always at others' expense. One's profits are usually at the expense of someone else's loss. Religions which look at life on the basis of distinction between oneself and others always have this sort of exclusiveness of spirit. The object being a rebirth of the I, Buddhism is of course extremely introspective. How can the I progress from the world of illusion to the world of realization? Is there any progression? Is there any progress? But it's a sound question. How can the I progress from illusion to realization? Can the I progress at all? Can it only just change garbs, robes? The basis of the process is self-introspection. This is the translation here of Trevor Leggett. I don't know what Obora used. Self-reformation. Total reform. A little change here or there. Self-reformation, thoroughgoing training, whereby it must be understood not training to train oneself to become this way, according to a model, an example. It's not thorough reformation. Training means this work of questioning, of looking into oneself, always freshly. This is the passing over, says Obora. This is the rebirth. And then at another place, consider our life as it is, with its crying and its laughing. There is in each case a trace left. Of crying there is a trace of crying, and of laughing the trace of that laughter. Our living leaves these traces. What I emphasize always is that even when it is laughter, we should laugh with a truly empty heart. It's not we should, but can one? Can one laugh with a truly empty heart? But we never do. Now he quotes here, "Cold today. Well, how are you?" Remarks which have no point, poured out like oil and accompanied with a little laugh. You know, no real laughter of pure enjoyment, because even in our laughter the heart does not become empty of its burden, because even in all laughter, the heart doesn't become totally empty of its burden. The thing called the I is in the breast, and the laughter is centered around that. It is laughing because things seem well for the I. Well, that's one kind of laughter. But there's also laughter to hide the burden of the I, the burden of the heart, the burden of inner pain. Can also be hidden by laughter. I once read that our funniest comedians are very depressed persons, fearful. Unable sometimes to stay alone in a room. Sometimes it is laughing because things seem well for the eye, and the crying is of the same sort. With each step, the track is left. And this is the way of life, and this way of life is the world of birth and death, the life of illusion. This leaving tracks, the me always leaving a track because something doesn't happen out of emptiness. Happens thoroughly, totally, and then finished, done with. Nothing chalked up in this mental bookkeeping of ours. Obora goes on. The tracks left by joy or grief are footmarks. In religious terms, Dogen calls them the heavy burden of ignorance. These footmarks. It's also called the cause and effect, the law of cause and effect, or karma, or the root of evil. Though I die, listen to this, though I die, the roots of the evil created are not annihilated. It says here, I have created. One can also leave the I out, because it is this I that is universal. Creates footmarks or tracks, and these tracks continue even after death. Don't they? When he calls it a load, meaning Dogen, calling the footmarks or the traces left by our actions and thoughts, when he calls it a load, he means that all the time our progress through life, there's a great burden which is more than we can really bear. The regrets, the pain, the resentments, the guilt, anguish, fear, anger, all the footprints of the me. There's a great burden which is more than we can really bear, and shouldering it we're drenched in sweat until finally our human life ends. We long somehow to put it down, by some means to lighten ourselves of the weight of conceptual thinking, because all of that takes place in this process of thinking. The I itself being thinking, being thought, bundles of it, made up of memory of past experiences since time immemorial. And all that comes of it, hopes, fears, longings, disappointments. We long to lighten ourselves of the weight of conceptual thinking, but to do so we have to be earnest seekers. He says seekers, one can say workers. Seeker always implies this goal out there, which is also an image made by the eye. If we're not, then there's no religion. There's not this feeling of urgency to put down this load. Religion, really meaning, if I recall correctly, comes from religere, to reunite. To unite again, become one again. The split healing. Healing meaning becoming whole, being whole. The split always occurring through conceptual thinking, which one of the main factors is this me, which is thought itself. Believing itself to be separate and permanent and very influential. The quest for inner lightness, to be able to cry with an emptiness within the heart, to be able to cry with an emptiness within the heart, meaning emptiness of self-pity, just crying. With others. Or crying by oneself, one has to look at this crying. Even though one may cry because one is sick and tired of looking and all that is seen. What is crying with an empty heart? Or is there crying then? When there's no feeling sorry for oneself? Crying. With sorrow. The sorrow of ignorance. The sorrow of all humankind, and yet with an empty heart, not empty of love and feeling, but empty of the me, which is afraid or wants something or doesn't want something. To be able to cry but with an emptiness within the heart, and to life and to laugh, but with the same emptiness, such is the great wisdom. To do things with an inner emptiness is the wisdom of the knowledge of ultimate emptiness. Only by ultimate emptiness can we live each step of this frustrating life without a load on the heart. You know, this is what this Prajnaparamita starts. The Bodhisattva of compassion, from the depth of wisdom, saw the emptiness of all 5 skandhas. The emptiness of the 5 skandhas, the body, the senses, feeling, the emotions, thinking, the will, and all of consciousness, which is the me. Can one see the emptiness of this all? It's in the seeing. Or it's awakening to that. Suddenly, when one least expects it, the emptiness of it all. And yet walking, laughing, crying, eating, drinking, living each step of this frustrating life without a load on the heart. Nirvana is translated extinction. Another translation is no wind, no wind. Extinction, here comes this idea, I gotta be extinct like a volcano. Actually, no volcano is really extinct. We think so. No wind. The wind of thoughts whipping up emotions. And the emotions, which set all kinds of bodily responses into motion, whipping up more thoughts. And so it goes round and round. Nirvana is translated extinction, but what extinction means is that even when crying, the crying leaves no traces. When it's over, it's finished. Completely finished. Done with. Over. Vorbei. Similarly, emptiness does not have the meaning of a void with nothing in it. It means not leaving a track. At present, each step is leaving a track. But if we can realize this trackless state, even in the present life, it is nirvana. A glimpse of this freedom where there's no me. No limitation. And an abundance of love and compassion. Longing to embrace all and everything and everybody. There's this beautiful death poem by the Sixth Patriarch, which we've read so often. Let's say it once more here, because it has this quality of emptiness, uttered at his death in the 80s he was, or however old. Calm and serene, not by always practicing the virtues. The editor puts in, just as the occasion arises. But that was not in the poem. Harassed and besieged, yet not to do evil. Through all the cyclical waves of life, yet the mind has no attachments or leaves no tracks. Actually, here in describing or saying a few words about Kanzeon, the Bodhisattva of compassion, Obora says that the first character of the name Kan is seeing, and it means to see things as they really are. Usually one hears that Kanzeon means hearing. He or she, in China, Kanzeon is more pictured as a woman. Here in Japan, apparently, as a man. In a fine Kanzeon statue, kind we have here, you can't tell, is it a man or woman? See things as they really are. And Obora continues, if asked what Buddhism is, I say Buddhism is seeing everything as it really is. That's a very simple statement, isn't it? Kanzeon is also hearing, coming to awakening by trying to find the root of hearing, where sounds come from, listening. But also Kanzeon as hearing the cries, the sorrow of the world, with 1,000 arms, each hand with a seeing eye, each helping hand with a seeing eye. If there's no seeing eye, and this is E-Y-E, not I capital. If the hand is seeing, then there may be help. If there's no seeing eye in the hand, there may be still the eye in the heart, the capital I. Wanting something, wanting to get something out of helping, a good feeling, alleviation of guilt, and so forth. At one point, Obora writes, "However I resolve not to be greedy, greediness appears. However I resolve not to be angry, anger arises. Our human life is such that however we resolve not to weep over things, we come to the state of weeping." Some people have mentioned this to me, quite a number. What is it with these resolutions? New year after new year after new year, we resolve. And then we go right along the same track. What is it about these resolutions? Is resolution the resolution? The dissolution of things? Or is that again concerning oneself with the ideal me, rather than looking at the real me and being on very familiar footing with it? So one doesn't deceive oneself and one doesn't deceive others, and is not deceived by others. Here, Obora says, "At present we keep doing the same things over and over again in the endless round of mundane good and bad." Mundane good and bad. He, at an earlier point, says also doing good is usually the I in that, and that the circumstances are conducive to doing something good. By the same token, circumstances are conducive to doing something bad when there's ignorance and inattention. At present we keep doing the same things over and over again in the endless round of mundane good and bad, built up on the ego illusion. We may happen to do good, we may happen to do evil. Then we say, how could such a great man do something so strange? How could such a man do something so wrong? This is all part of the round. Ideal images of people, that they're good, and therefore they can't do bad, and then one is shocked to bits. And somebody doesn't do what one thinks is good. Against our will, anger rises, to discover in the very midst of it the world of light is the meaning of the phrase, the passions are the bodhi. To discover in the very midst of the world of it, in the very midst of anger, the world of light. What is this world of light in the midst of anger? A miracle happening from some place? Or needing to find out at one time what is this anger and looking at it with great attention, with great energy. Energy is this light. Which empties let us get on to some of this autobiographical material of this Abbot Obora. What then is our life of endless circling? It may be the mind arising beautiful as heaven. It may be the mind springing up as a hungry ghost, but both equally uncertain, because we have still to circle in the worlds of good and evil. Do we have to? Don't make an axiom out of this. We do, if there's no attention, penetrating attention. I'm asked to speak before a congregation. I make my address just like a Jizo Bodhisattva, with a feeling that there's nothing in my heart. By the power of the knowledge of ultimate emptiness, I speak in the nirvana state, with nothing in the heart. Very easy to stand on a pulpit or something. Who's there to challenge? Everybody looking up to you. And those who listen are also in the nirvana state with nothing in the heart, ready to receive the words descending into the heart, whatever. You must know better. They are all like Kanon Bodhisattvas, maybe really listening with an empty heart, just listening. As we often say in the beginning of Sesshin, listening with no comparison, not wanting to get something out of this. And here, Bora, not wanting to give something, just speaking. With no motive. Not wanting to help this one and that one. And yet, Obora continues, this Jizo of mine and those canons of theirs are surprisingly unreliable. One day, when roused by some association, this Jizo becomes furious and looks like a hell mask. And those canons put on the face of hungry ghosts. Life is so uncertain. Where can we find a firm footing? Human life is always quivering with uncertainty. When the circumstances are good, we do a little good. When they are bad, we may do anything. Painfully, the uncertainty of life is borne in upon me, upon one. For some 3 weeks out of each month, I'm away from the temple. I'm not often home, so when I do come back, I send a postcard 2 or 3 days beforehand, saying exactly what time, to the minute, I shall be at the tram stop. Then I anticipate that I shall be met. The day comes. In the train I have a pleasant feeling, with nothing on my mind. And in the tram car too, there's the feeling of emptiness. My mind clear. Someone will be meeting me. I descend at the stop and look around. Look everywhere. But no one has come to meet me. Not a soul. And where has gone the pleasant feeling? Where has Jizo gone? Where has faith gone? Where has Satori gone? I hardly ever get home, and I told them the exact time. And however busy they may be, surely someone could meet me. These ignoble hell feelings arise. This is the simple truth. However I try to suppress them, they will not be suppressed. Why suppress them? Why not just look at them? Hey, there's too much still teaching and ideas going on. Such is the truth of one's delusion of self. Well, part of the delusion is a suppression. Why didn't they meet me? I try to suppress it, but I cannot. And that is the manifestation of what we are. Having done a little spiritual training in my life, I scold myself at making all this fuss in my heart over nothing at all. Pick up my bag and walk back to the temple. As I come up to the gate, someone comes out. "Oh, I was just coming to meet your reverence. We got your postcard with the time, but there was an emergency suddenly, so please excuse us." And greeted by a smiling face, this abbot's hell heart disappears. Why, of course, how natural it was. And I feel completely happy and content. The heart revolves endlessly. Suddenly angry, suddenly at peace. Where can one find a firm foothold? Going in, I call, "A cup of tea, please." "Why, yes, we've been expecting you, and the water's on the boil." I feel more and more pleased. Nowhere like home. But perhaps it isn't like that. When I get to the gate, no one comes out. More and more annoyed, I go in. "Bring me a cup of tea." My voice is as yet quietish. When there's no answer, I call again, my voice a little bit louder. Still no answer. Now I'm shouting, "Aren't you bringing that tea?" Isn't it pathetic? Obora says it. As I've shouted, so now there's a shout, "Coming!" It's a row already in that coming. Oh, whichever way. In that coming are a million shades of meaning. While the cat's away, we were getting on nicely, and now the old man suddenly come back, and as usual, there'll be a fuss over every little thing. He's so crotchety. It's all in the coming. Oh, coming. Words. Sometimes we think we can get away with them, but as the French say, c'est le ton qui fait la musique. It's in the sound that the music is made. I've caught it, and I cannot take that one word calmly. I've caught it. Yeah, one hears. And children hear. Parents may suppress their anger and talk sweetly, but the kids get it. Because they don't listen to the voice, they look at the eyes. When there's anger, it shows in the eyes, as it shows in the sweet voice. Why not look at it all? Acknowledge it to oneself. Which means great attention and a great urgency to do that. So it is not this constant revolving. Suppose the tone was bad, yet is not the relationship of teacher and student most close? A relationship that cannot be severed? Asked Obora. It all depends what the relationship is based on. Is it based on ideas and ideals? In that case, it isn't even a relationship. Are they human beings working together as human beings? Then what is there to sever? One can only discover things together in this relationship. And here's another one. It's called The Inward Loneliness. My prayer is for no great thing. I always pray just that with 150 odd families to which I minister, I should live in peace, in a state of no I. But it doesn't turn out so. One family who were very hospitable to me, I say hospitable, but this is the country, meaning the countryside. So it means a radish or a carrot from time to time. Well, they were hospitable. Then the grandfather died and they asked me to perform the funeral rites. When the day came, the rain was falling in torrents and the roads were flooded. A coolie came and told me he had been sent to take my things, including the ceremonial chair and the umbrella which are used in the rite. With kindly intention, and make a note of the kindliness of my intention, I said, on a day like this, they surely won't have the funeral rite in the open. So there's no point in your struggling through the storm with that big chair. Please just take my things. For a chair, they could ask the school next door to lend one, and I'll use that for the ceremony. The coolie happily agreed and went off with just the bag. I followed a little later and came to the front door, imagining that it would obviously be held indoors. The young master was standing at the door with a countenance like thunder. Your Reverence, we're not going to have the funeral ceremony. I had a sinking feeling that something was wrong. Not going to have a ceremony for your grandfather? But why? Never mind why, but we've cancelled it. What to do? I can't think what might have made you cancel it. Now tell me, what is it that happened? Abbot, it's no use pretending you don't know. Pretending? I'm not pretending about anything. Please tell me what it is. All right then, I will. This morning we sent a coolie who was to ask to take your chair. And what did your Reverence say? That chair would get spoiled if he carried it through the rain. So we've asked such a mean priest for grandfather's funeral that he won't risk spoiling his chair. We're going to have grandfather saved, but now we're not going. And the ceremony's off. One can see what most ceremonies are the expressions of. When this sort of thing happens, says Obora, where is the no I, which we're always thinking about in our heads? Where is the Satori? It's not easy when one actually comes up against life. Where is that faith and enlightenment which were here just now? And what remains in our heart at this moment? However, I pray to be peaceable. When such unreasonable accusations are made, I want to shout, "Shut up!" But I cannot. Let the abbot think. If I give that shout, am I not doing something which I shall never be able to retrieve? There's a very fine description here. Stopping for an instant and seeing the consequences. This is not ruminating, this is seeing consequences of what one says and does by not rushing headlong into it, which means there's already the energy of attention, of attending. I want to shout, but our life is this, that one cannot shout. We're impelled on the wheel of birth and death, borne along on the round of karma, and for all my prayers, inevitably my character appears, the illusory character appears. However, I pray to be without I, My character is that I cannot be without I. That's the very essence of character. I is the character. What is it that is without character? And as I come gradually to comprehend this I cannot help feeling an inexpressible loneliness and desolation. Doesn't this speak for every one of us? When one really comprehends this I thoroughly for the first time, comes a feeling of loneliness and desolation. Because the I that wants to do something about the I is the I. What can I do? Abora continues, I do not know how much you feel it, but in the contradictions revealed by introspection, there's a great feeling of desolation. This contrary life, in which we cannot be what we like to be, when examined from within, produces a desolation. This contrary life in which we cannot be what we like to be. Because what we like to be is still the me. With its ideals. Closing its eye to the truth of itself. Even with one's parents, unable to discard the meanness of self. Even with spiritual people, unable to throw off our deceits. Yet, when I come to penetrate to the very bottom of that desolation, penetrate to the bottom of it, question it, plumb it, be that attentively. Then as I stand, there suddenly manifests a power of absolute, unconditional forgiveness. It is a power which will never desert man. It's not only unconditional forgiveness, it's unconditional love, which is unconditional forgiveness with no one to forgive. Because who is there to forgive and who is there to be forgiven? It is a power which will never desert man. If there's an opening to it. And me seeing its utter impotence, calming down, slowing down. Not knowing what to do. Not trying one more thing. Impelled step after step as we are in the circling of this life, which when we want to speak, we cannot speak, that power of absolute forgiveness is dimly glimpsed. And then a joy comes to the heart. And now comes what he says in this situation. It was wrong to have caused you anger. But for the sake of your grandfather who has just died, will you not let me make the funeral service? To be able to say these words from the bottom of the heart is through no power of my own. It is the joy of the grace of Kanon. Kanon, meaning love and compassion, which is not one's own, doesn't belong to anyone, has nothing to do with belonging. And it cannot be clutched and possessed. What we clutch and possess is not love. It's possessing each other, in which there's also jealousy and fear of loss. When the self seems merged in kanon, enveloped in the power of absolute forgiveness, which is kanon, for the first time the heart becomes empty. And in this emptiness, is there still the duality of the self and kanon? Then it's still a little bit of an idea lingering. An empty heart is a full heart. If all I could manage to say is, well, let's pass it over, let me take the service, then the joy is only a faint one. Probably no joy at all, but a sense of duty. And feeling pretty good at doing this in spite of those, you know what, people. He makes a comment here. He says, some people dub it self-intoxication, this deep joy. Of loving. Of no division. Some people dub it self-intoxication. When conditions are favorable, they say, you experience a feeling of well-being within. So they say, and let them say it. I have the deep certainty that it is an ecstasy, something blessed. And the joy comes when the speech proceeds from a heart which has been emptied. We'll close here for today. The four vows.
All beings without number.
I vow to liberate endless blind passions. I vow to uproot against beyond measure, Amen.